There is a very specific moment in the dynamic between a man and a woman, a moment that makes no noise, a moment that doesn't announce itself, a moment most men don't even realize has arrived. It's the moment when a woman starts to desire a man without saying it, without claiming it, without showing it openly. And this is exactly the moment when many mature men make a decisive mistake. Not a loud mistake, not an obvious one, not a clumsy error, a quiet mistake, subtle, almost invisible, often made with good intentions but powerful enough to weaken desire instead of letting it grow. What makes this mistake so common is that it doesn't come from immaturity. It comes from a misunderstanding of female desire. When a mature man senses that a woman is beginning to desire him, his instinct is often to do something. He feels that something is shifting and he wants to respond correctly. He tells himself he should be clearer, more present, more reassuring, more intentional. He believes that seriousness will protect the connection, that clarity will stabilize it, that showing availability will make her feel safe. And logically, this makes sense because he has learned that stability is a value, because he has learned that maturity means responsibility, because he has learned that women need emotional safety. All of that is true. But timing, music matters because female desire, especially in a mature woman, does not grow on the same timeline as emotional security. When a woman begins to desire a man, she is not yet in a building phase. She is in a sensory and nervous system phase. Her body feels something before her mind explains it. Her nervous system reacts before her thoughts catch up. And that desire is music fragile, not because it is weak, but because it is alive. And anything alive does not respond well to being controlled. The mistake many mature men make is trying to secure too early what has just begun to emerge. They notice subtle changes in her, a longer look, a more focused presence, a different quality of attention, a softer way of listening, and instead of remaining exactly the same internally, they shift. Not dramatically, not consciously, but subtly. They speak a little more, they explain themselves a little more, they become slightly more available, they try to clarify what is happening. They don't do this out of fear, they do it out of responsibility, but that subtle shift is immediately registered by the female nervous system. Not intellectually, not consciously, instinctively. She feels that something has changed. The man is no longer standing exactly where he was when desire appeared. And for a mature woman, this matters deeply. Because a mature woman is no longer attracted to effort. She is attracted to inner containment. When she begins to desire, she observes, she feels, she tests without even knowing she is. Testing. She is sensing one precise thing. Can this man remain centered when I start to open? Does he continue to live his own trajectory? Does he keep his emotional stability? Can he tolerate uncertainty without rushing to resolve it? This is where many men fail because they interpret feminine signals as invitations to act. They believe desire needs encouragement, support, confirmation. But desire does not need encouragement. It needs space. From the moment a man starts adjusting his behavior to preserve desire, a new dynamic appears. A dynamic where he is no longer fully anchored in himself, but slightly oriented toward her response. And that orientation, even minimal, alters polarity. Not because it shows weakness, music, but because it shows emotional movement toward her. And female desire depends on the man not moving toward her emotionally too soon. At this stage, the woman does not shut down. She does not reject him. She does not disappear. She slows down. She responds less quickly. She reveals a little less. She becomes more reserved, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to feel. She is checking whether the man can hold his position without feedback. Can he stay calm without validation? Can he stay grounded without reassurance? Can he remain himself without needing to secure the bond? And this is where the mistake becomes visible because most mature men interpret this slowing down as danger. Music. They sense distance. They feel uncertainty. So they compensate, they talk more, they reassure, they explain intentions, they try to clarify the connection, and in doing so, they send a powerful message to her music nervous system. His inner state is affected by my desire, not weak, not needy, but affected. And the moment a man becomes emotionally affected by a woman's desire, the dynamic changes, because a mature woman does not want to be the emotional axis. of a man's stability. She wants to be chosen by a man who already has a center. This is a crucial distinction. When she senses that her desire influences his balance, a quiet alarm goes off. Not panic, but caution. She begins to feel pressure. Music, even if none is expressed. Pressure to respond, pressure to confirm, pressure to carry something. And desire cannot exist under pressure. This is why so many men hear women say, "I don't know, something changed." That something is rarely a specific action. It's the loss of inner posture. A man who remains unchanged when a woman starts to desire him becomes more attractive. A man who tries to manage desire weakens it. And this mistake is especially common among mature men because they want to do the right thing. They confuse emotional maturity with emotional management, but desire cannot be managed. It can only be respected, and that respect begins with restraint. And this is where the dynamic becomes delicate. Because when a woman starts to desire a man, she does not move forward blindly. She becomes more precise. She doesn't increase intensity. She increases discernment. At this stage, her desire is no longer about attraction alone. It becomes about containment. She is not asking herself, do I want him? She is asking herself, often without words, can I stay myself around him? This is a crucial shift. A mature woman has already experienced what it feels like to be desired by a man who slowly collapses emotionally. She knows the pattern. At first, music, he is stable, grounded, centered. Then desire appears, and suddenly he starts adjusting, seeking music reassurance, wanting clarity, leaning emotionally, not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. And she remembers music, how that story ends. So when she begins to desire a man now, she becomes alert, not anxious, alert. She pays attention to his response to her openness. Does he stay still internally, or does he move toward her? Does he remain anchored in his life? Or does he start orbiting the connection? Does he continue speaking from a place of self-containment, or does he begin speaking to secure something? This is not a conscious checklist. It's a bodily reading. Her nervous system is scanning for one thing above all else. Is this man solid even when I don't feed him? And this is where many men misunderstand what's music happening. They believe that when a woman slows down, she is losing interest. They think they need to re-engage her. But often, she is doing the opposite. She is creating space to see what remains when she is not actively giving energy. And space reveals everything. In space, a man's posture becomes visible. Some men become restless. They fill the silence. Music, they ask questions, they seek confirmation. Others become irritated. Music, they withdraw emotionally. They punish with distance. But a man who truly sustains desire does neither. He remains. He doesn't music chase. He doesn't pull away. He stays in his lane. And this is rare because most men have been conditioned to believe that desire must be maintained through action. But mature feminine desire does not respond to action. It responds to non-reactivity. A man who does not react emotionally to shifts becomes deeply attractive because he communicates something without saying it. I am not destabilized by your rhythm. And that is music profoundly reassuring. At this point, if the man holds his posture, the woman's desire begins to deepen. Not explosively, not dramatically, but internally. She begins to include him in her inner world, not as a fantasy, not as a projection, but as a reference point. She notices how she feels around him compared to other men. She notices that conversations with others feel noisier, less grounded, more performative. She notices that with him, she doesn't have to explain herself as much. And this comparison matters because desire grows through contrast. Now, something else begins to happen. She starts observing how he handles lack of control because desire at this stage places the woman in a vulnerable position. She doesn't want to need him. She doesn't want to depend. So she watches carefully. Does he try to define the relationship too soon? Does he seek verbal reassurance? Does he push for certainty? Or does he allow ambiguity ambiguity without anxiety. This is where many men sabotage music themselves. They feel ambiguity is danger. They want clarity, labels, direction. They believe that naming the connection will stabilize it. But to a mature woman, premature definition feels like pressure. Not because she doesn't want commitment, but because she wants commitment to grow from shared stability, not emotional urgency. When a man tries to define too early, she feels that he is trying to own what has not yet settled, and desire pulls back. Not out of rejection, out of self-protection. Music. Because a mature woman does not want to build something that requires constant emotional management. She wants something that stands on its own, so she watches. She sees whether the man continues living fully, whether he keeps his routines, his interests, his direction, whether he can enjoy the connection without making it the center of his emotional life. And if he can, her desire transforms. It becomes quieter, more stable, more selective. She stops testing. She stops pulling music back. She begins trusting. This is the point where desire either becomes attachment or dissolves quietly, and the difference is almost always the same. Did the man stay the same, or did he try to secure what was unfolding? A man who stays the same communicates strength without effort, not dominance, not control. Music, strength of self-containment. He shows that he does not need to extract certainty from the connection to feel whole. And that allows the woman to relax, to soften, to open further because now she senses something rare. This man will not consume her. He will not collapse into her. He will not make her responsible for his emotional balance. And that is when desire becomes sustainable, because mature desire is not about excitement. It is about trust in the dynamic. At this point, the woman does not rush forward. She does not cling. She stays present. She stays attentive, and she lets herself feel more, not because she is trying to secure the man, but because she feels safe enough to desire him. This is the phase where many men misread calmness as lack of passion. They think something is missing, but in reality, something has stabilized, and stable desire is far more powerful than volatile desire. It doesn't burn fast. It burns long. There is a final phase in this dynamic that very few men truly understand, because this is the phase where nothing seems to happen. And yet everything is decided. When a woman's desire has stabilized, when she no longer tests reflexively, when she no longer pulls back to check whether the man can hold his ground, something subtle takes place. She stops monitoring him, not because she no longer cares, but because she no longer needs to. And this is the moment that determines whether desire will mature or slowly disappear. At this stage, a mature woman is no longer responding emotionally to the man's actions. She is responding to his way of being. She feels whether he remains grounded over time, whether his presence stays consistent, whether his emotional posture remains calm and self-contained. She watches how he handles comfort, because comfort is where many men fail. When a man senses that a woman feels good with him, he often relaxes in the wrong direction. He stops holding himself. He becomes emotionally loose. He lets his structure soften too much, not because he doesn't care, but because he assumes the work is done. And this is where desire quietly fades, because desire does not survive collapse. A mature woman does not need a man to be rigid, but she needs him to remain upright. Upright means he does not dissolve into familiarity. He does not overshare emotionally. He does not lean on her for reassurance. He stays warm but structured. And this balance is extremely rare. This is also where many men become confused. They feel the connection is good, stable, comfortable, and they mistake comfort for completion. Music. They believe they can now express everything, reveal everything, lean fully. But mature feminine desire does not respond to emotional flooding. It responds to contained music openness. A man who reveals himself gradually, calmly, without unloading remains attractive. A man who opens much too fast loses polarity. This is not about hiding. It's about pacing. A mature woman wants to feel that the man has depth, but also boundaries around that depth. She wants to feel invited, not immersed. Another mistake men make at this stage is seeking confirmation. They ask indirectly for reassurance. They fish for validation. They look for signs that the woman is still invested, but desire does not like to be checked. The moment a man looks to a woman to confirm his value, something shifts. She may not consciously notice it, but her nervous system does, and the dynamic subtly reverses. Instead of feeling drawn, she feels responsible. And responsibility kills desire. A mature woman wants to desire freely, not out of obligation. So she observes. She sees whether the man continues choosing her, not because she gives him something, but because he wants to. She notices whether he stays aligned with his values, whether he keeps his standards, whether he does not compromise himself to maintain closeness. And if he does, something very important happens. She begins to feel secure without feeling trapped. This is the rarest form of desire, desire that does not rush. Desire that does not burn out. Desire that does not need drama to stay alive. At this point, music attachment may begin. Not attachment as dependence, but attachment as orientation. Music. She begins factoring him into her life quietly. She considers him in music her decisions. She imagines continuity without forcing it. She doesn't announce this. She doesn't pressure him. She lets it settle. And if the man continues to remain stable, not static, but stable attachment, music deepens. But here is the final truth. Even at this stage, desire can still disappear if the man changes. If he becomes complacent, if he becomes emotionally lazy, if he assumes she will stay no matter what. A mature woman will not fight to maintain desire alone. She will not dramatize. She will not argue. She will simply music feel less. And when she feels less, she withdraws quietly. This is why so many men are surprised when a woman slowly fades away without explanation. From their perspective, nothing went wrong, but internally something collapsed. Not because of a specific action, but because the man stopped holding his posture. He stopped being the man who didn't need to be reassured, the man who didn't rush, the man who didn't lean. And without that posture, desire has nothing to hold on to. This is the mistake mature men make. They think desire is something to be achieved, but desire is something to be respected continuously. It is not secured by words, not maintained by effort, not preserved by control. It survives only when the man remains himself before desire appears, while it grows and after it settles. The man who understands this does not fear desire. He does not chase it. He does not try to own it. He allows it. And because he does not lose himself in the process, desire does not lose interest in him. That is the difference between fleeting attraction and lasting desire. And that difference is decided silently, as in moments where nothing seems to happen, but everything does.